We received a call of a runaway juvenile. After speaking with the mom began to piece together bits and pieces of information over an extended period of time. The information that she was gathering and conveying to us began to elevate the threat level that we were perceiving with this information. She believed her son was suicidal, and she began to share information that several of her weapons were missing. Her vehicle was missing, in addition to her son. She also said that her son was with a companion, and that they were dressed in camo, and that is not consistent with what we would typically see from somebody that is suicidal. That began to trigger a larger threat assessment picture. Our threat management unit began to take the tips and leads that we had and utilize the technology we have available to us. Our license plate readers was at the top of that list. We began to have, we noted that there were hits with the vehicle down in Fashion Valley. We dispatched officers into the area of the mall as a possible location that was a threat. We also gathered information that one of the individuals was associated in some form or fashion with Madison High School. We alerted the school police department, and we dispatched officers into the area of Madison High School. While we were gathering this information and we were trying to zero in on where these individuals were at, we received the call at approximately 11:43 that there was an active shooter at the Islamic Center. Officers were in the area, still talking with mom, trying to piece together where they might be, locations that she felt that they would be at. And that was just a few blocks away. Those officers, once they heard what was happening at the Islamic Center, immediately dispatched themselves to the mosque. And just to recap what we talked about earlier, when officers arrived on scene, they came across, in some form or fashion, 3 deceased individuals, victims. One was a security guard at the center.
So this happened today. The Islamic Center of San Diego experienced a mass shooting, and the shooters have been identified as Kane Clark, who was 17 years old, and Caleb Vasquez, who was 18 years old. And this is sourced from the NBC. Now, prior to the shooting, one of the mothers had alerted the police that her son was suicidal and said that he stole her guns and vehicle. Law enforcement did not get there in time, unfortunately. This is a sad story. It's sad because all of this could have been prevented from everything that I'm hearing. All of it could have been prevented. One of the deceased victims was a security guard, and both shooters were found deceased blocks away in their vehicle from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Why did they do this? Hopefully, in the days to come, we will find out why. Now, an independent journalist, Stella Escobedo, pieced a few things together. I would like us to watch her take. Now, if you have some thoughts about her take, put it in the chat. Right now, I don't have any opinion one way or the other. The only opinion I have is that this is a horrible thing that happened, and it could have been prevented. So let's listen to Stella give us her breakdown.
Hey guys, breaking news out of San Diego. There was a shooting today at the Islamic Center of San Diego. So here's what we know. Security guard has been killed, 3 dead total, 2 teen suspects. Yeah, it was a scary situation. From what I understand, there's a school inside, so there were little children. Horrible all around. Eyewitnesses say they heard multiple gunshots coming from inside the building. But here's what people need to know about this mosque. The Islamic Center of San Diego has had a controversial reputation in the community for years because of its ties to 2 9/11 hijackers. Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mehrdar were known to have attended the Islamic Center of San Diego while living in San Diego before the attacks. They also, learned how to fly planes in Miramar. And more recently, the mosque's imam, Taha Hassan, well, he became a controversial figure in the community himself. He was initially brought into San Diego for his interfaith efforts to help bridge relationships between the Muslim, Jewish, and Christian communities. But after October 7th, major outrage after making comments that resistance is justified when people are occupied, comments many people viewed as defending or rationalizing Hamas. He has spewed a lot of anti-Israel rhetoric from his pulpit. His wife also facing controversy after October 7th, after she posted an image depicting a Star of David beheading babies, a post that sparked outrage in the Jewish community. The mosque has also frequently held events with CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. And as many of you know, CARE was named in 2008 as an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest Hamas terror financing case in U.S. history, the Holy Land Foundation. CARE has denied wrongdoing, was never charged with a crime, but the organization's history and ties have remained a source of controversy for years. Now, as we continue to follow this story, we don't know yet the full motive or the identity of the shooters.
All right, so that's her take. President Trump, I'll come back to what she said. I just want to play what President Trump responded when he was asked about this shooting during a press conference today.
Mr. President, on the IRS,
they're giving a briefing on it a little while at the mosque. They're giving a briefing, and it's a terrible situation. I've been given some early updates, but we're going to be going back and looking at it very strongly.
All right, so President Trump giving a very clear statement is a horrible thing that happened. I think it's a horrible thing that happened. Stella has some background on the mosque. And essentially, there has been some controversy with respect to the imam, his wife, the fact that several of the terror suspects from 9/11 attended that mosque. The mosque has had a very bad reputation in the area. Now, here's the question that is going through my mind right now, and let me know if it's going through yours as well. Could it be that these two kids thought that they were essentially retaliating against the mosque's past controversial stance on terrorism, Hamas, and so on, or was it completely unrelated? Now, when you look at the posts that are circulating on social media, there's one that stands out to me, and that is a post that essentially puts a side by side of the shooter. If you recall, there was a shooting that took place in Texas, in Austin, Texas. I'm going to put this up on my screen. I'm just going to put it up on my screen so that you can see what I'm talking about. Now, there was a shooter that attacked a bar in Austin, Texas, and he was clearly he clearly had Islamic motivations because of the war in Iran and so on. And the headlines for that particular shooting, I have it up on the screen right now. The headlines for that particular shooting, essentially with the guy's t-shirt clearly stating property of Allah and so on, and of course he attacked being motivated because of the war in Iran. They said they are still searching for the motive, okay, after the Austin bar shooting left 2 people dead. Okay, that was what they posted, okay? But with this shooting, almost immediately, you had the headlines say police investigating shooting at Islamic Center of San Diego as a hate crime. So now, why is this relevant? It's because of the two-tier justice system, the two-tier media reporting that you see. And whenever you take away common sense, whenever you take away a balanced view of things, whenever you take away now what's the word I'm looking for? Fairness. You have things like this happening. Clearly, the person who's wearing the T-shirt that says he's the property of Allah walks into a bar that essentially, Americans attend who identify as Christians. He shoots up the place, kills 2 people. They say they're still looking for the motives. We have this other shooting. Clearly, both of them are hate crimes. They are both hate crimes. The shooting at the mosque is a hate crime. Why don't they report the shooting of someone who is clearly Islamic leaning as a hate crime as well? Now, is this kind of two-tier justice system, two-tier reporting that creates the mental illness that we're seeing in the world today? Perhaps these 2 kids essentially have been affected one way or the other by the insanity that we see in our world today, and then they decided that they would take some justice into their own hands. And then, but it is sad that essentially they erased themselves after they committed this heinous crime. And that's a pattern we see whenever you find people who are mentally unstable. They go out there, they commit these heinous crimes, and then they erase themselves. Look, the reporting tomorrow is going to continue to expose some of the things that happened leading up to the shooting. But I'll be honest with you. Okay, this is a horrible incident. It should not have happened. The mom didn't the mother did not essentially lock her guns or secure her guns properly. And I personally I agree with the moves that are being made by the DOJ to essentially prosecute parents for some of the crimes that their kids commit. Like, if you have guns in the house, you need to secure your guns. Okay. Now, I am not for the overreach that the Democrats are pushing for with extensive and intrusive gun control up to the point of essentially removing guns from society. I am not for that, because the next conversation they're going to start having around this incident within this week is gun control. The left-wing media is going to start talking about gun control, but I totally disagree. There are enough laws on the books. They should be enforced. And I'll be honest with you, I think we should bring back the death penalty across all the states. They have to bring back the death penalty. Why? Because it is a deterrent. Whenever people decide to commit these kinds of crimes, especially the ones that are sane, who plan these things out, they are sane. They are counting on being incarcerated for the rest of their lives and feeding off the taxpayer for the rest of their lives. Okay, so I think that there is a reward system that is baked into life imprisonments that a death penalty will simply remove. So that's my thoughts. Okay, I think the death penalty should be brought back because of the deterrent that it could bring concerning crimes like this. That is what I think. Now, okay, I hope I didn't say something off-putting, but I think that it is still legal in some states, and I think it's fair to act as a deterrent. I know that there are there are cases where the cases are not tried properly, and people find out years later that they were essentially they were not prosecuted adequately, or the evidence was contaminated and so on. There's stuff like that, and I know that there has to be a way to figure out the mistakes before the sentences are carried out. But you know what I'm saying, okay? I'm trying to talk my way out of um, essentially being called out on the internet, not because this is not a proper position, but because I have to explain it. Okay, I have to explain it. We have people like Tim Pool who don't agree with this because they feel like if you give the state the power to do this, that there might be someone who gets into office and might abuse it. That's why checks and balances exist. Okay, and that's why I'm also a proponent that if someone makes a bad call, a blatantly bad call that they knew was a bad call while they were serving in office, they should be prosecuted for it. Well, that's just me. All right, so let me know what you think about this very sad situation. Some people have the position that, oh, it's a mosque that was known to be notorious. It doesn't matter. That's why you have the police, that's why you have the FBI, that's why you have law enforcement and the DOJ and the courts. Okay, that's what they're there for. And I pray that all of those things function properly, because if people begin to feel like the justice system isn't working adequately, they begin to take the law into their own hands. And that's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing. I come from a third world country where there is jungle justice happening occasionally on the streets. It's a horrible thing to see. So let the justice system work the way it's supposed to work. All right, now let's jump into the next story. We're going to be looking at Thomas Massie. Okay, last week we covered his emerging or developing the developing situation with a scandal that he's trying to navigate with a lady that he was romantically involved with for a while, and she essentially blew the whistle on the whole thing. Now, with the fallout of that, with the elections holding in, I think is today. I think it held today. I don't know what the results are, but it held today, and everything else revolving around this entire thing. Here's what CNN has to say about his chances of winning.
Man, look at this. Chance that Massie is, in fact, the Kentucky 4 GOP nominee. It has been falling considerably over the last 10 days, according to the cash prediction market. Look at this. It was 71% 10 days ago. Look where that number is now. It's 44%. So chances more likely than not, though it is very close, that Massie will, in fact, go down to defeat. But again, we're just going to have to wait and see the votes getting cast and counted, because this is quite close. But any time that an incumbent member of Congress goes down, he has done something seriously wrong in the minds of the voters. And in this case, if Massie goes down, it is that he crossed Donald John Trump.
All right, so that's what CNN thinks. And do you know what? I think CNN might just be right. CNN might just be right, because this is Thomas Massie. A few years ago, this was just in 2024. Here's what he had to say about Donald Trump.
All, the main thing I hear from people back home is they're mad that nobody's held accountable in Washington, D.C. Well, I think we need to hold Trump accountable. He didn't build the wall. He didn't get Mexico to pay for it. He ran up $7.8 trillion of debt. He fumbled the repeal of Obamacare. There's so many missed promises. He gave a commendation, an award to Dr. Fauci after he shut down our country, and hasn't held anybody at the FDA or the CDC responsible. So, let's hold that guy accountable. Contrast, people have rallied to Trump's defense because he's been indicted 4 times. And, I feel compelled to rally to his defense because that's an attack on all of us. But here's the problem. This summer, they're going to be litigating these cases in the court, and these indictments are going to ripen into convictions. And we're going to be talking about the finer points of whether you can pay a porn star with your campaign money or whether you should write it off as a business expense. I mean, the lawsuit itself is ridiculous, but the underlying facts aren't disputed. And I think people are going to kind of recoil from that when all that stuff starts coming out this summer. And the polls that show him beating Biden, those are going to switch very quickly.
Oh, well, that didn't age very well. Well, JD Vance was asked about Thomas Massie doing a TP USA event, and this is what he had to say.
I think the problem with Thomas, and I've told him this in private, and now I guess I'll say it in public, is it's one thing to disagree with the party on a particular issue. It's one thing to have your independent stand on a number of questions. And by the way, some of the stuff where Thomas Massie has been independent against the Republican Party, I've agreed with him with. Thomas and I worked together during 2023, where I was trying to stop the limitless flow of American money to Ukraine, and Thomas was one of the people I was working closest with it. But that's one thing. Being independent, having your own opinions is one thing. Voting against the party on every single issue, you're eventually going to make too many enemies. And that is the problem that Thomas has had. It's not one issue, it's not 3 or 4 issues. It's that every time that we've needed Thomas for a vote, he has been completely unwilling to provide it. That is why the President of the United States has trained his ire on Thomas Massie. It's because we can never count on him for some of the most difficult votes. I wish that that weren't the case. I say that as somebody who's known Thomas well before I got into politics, but politics is politics, and when you always vote against the party, you can't expect the party to actually back you.
All right, and then President Trump released this. He released this video. Look, when you rub President Trump the wrong way, he pulls out all the stops.
I hope put him out of business tomorrow. I'm in the Oval Office, and we're in a fight against the worst congressman in the history of our country. His name is Thomas Massie. He's from Kentucky. I hope you're going to put him out of business tomorrow. He is so bad. Got an election coming up. He's running against a great guy, a great patriot, Ed Gilrain. He's fantastic. But forget that. Massie's the worst congressman in the history of our country, always voting against Republicans and good values. So get rid of Thomas Massie.
And that was Donald Trump. Now, on the political side, he hasn't been very cooperative, or he hasn't been a great teammate for the GOP, for Republicans, for good policies. He's teamed up with people who essentially hurt the president. Now, no matter how you feel about the Epstein files situation, it's weird that Thomas Massie didn't do this during the Biden administration. Ro Khanna didn't do this during the Biden administration. But all of a sudden, Epstein became such a big deal. Is it important for justice to be gotten for everyone who was affected by the Epstein, essentially the Epstein scandal or the Epstein island situation? Yes, you need to get justice for them. But Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna know very well that most of the people who are on the list who actually did those things are outside the jurisdiction of the United States, and they are valuable to international trade for the United States. It's a horrible thing to say, but they know that that is the situation, and they just want to hurt Trump in order to essentially bring down his numbers and ensure that anyone he recommends in 2028 is dead on arrival. That is essentially the play. Should people be brought to justice? 100%, 1,000%. But the way they were going about this entire thing, it looked purely political. Okay, how do I know it's purely political? Because you didn't hear them make any noise during the Biden years. Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna, zilch, nothing about it. So it was all political. Now, This is what caught my attention. I wish it was something else that caught my attention, but it was this story about a woman that Thomas Massie was in a relationship with, and they had a falling out, and then she goes public about certain things that he was into sexually. And Laura Loomer decides that she's going to dig deeper, because when I saw the report was essentially community noted on X, and I use X to source my stories. And I'm like, okay, is this story valid? Is it verified? And if there are community notes on the stories, I back away from the stories until it's verified. Now, I saw a community note. I backed away from the story the day I saw it. The following day, Laura Loomer picked it up, and I felt, okay, it looks like there's something to this story. Now, Laura Loomer has interviewed the lady. I played the video of the lady being interviewed. I think that was it last year? She was being interviewed, and now Laura Loomer interviews her on her show. And let's have a listen to what they discuss just for a bit.
That you knew that he had been speaking to another woman before you. You're talking about romantically, right? So this is pretty fast, because we're talking August 30th, and you said that he reached out to you a week before then, right? So that would have been the third week of August, and his wife had only died a month and a half prior to that. How many women are we talking about that you at least know about that he had sexual relationships with in the immediate aftermath of his wife dying, before
Well,
you began your relationship 2 months after?
He didn't have an intimate relationship with the person that he had met from X. He had just talked to that person. I know there was an intimate relationship before me, though.
And do you know who that was with?
I know there's speculation. I just don't feel comfortable.
Did he ever tell you who it was with? Because I mean, if he told you who it was with, I mean, those are his words. Who did he say it was with?
A congresswoman.
Do we know who that congresswoman is?
Mm-hmm.
Who's the congresswoman?
Oh, it's Lauren.
Lauren Boebert?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Oh,
why would he tell you that he had a...
Okay. A couple of weeks back, when we did the UFO thing and Lauren Boebert was speaking, I said something about her, and I said that she'd been naughty. Okay. Back, I think it was back in 2023, or was it 2022? There was a situation at a theater with Lauren Boebert. Okay. Acting lewdly with someone she was on a date with, and she was drunk. And I was surprised that she was talking about Christ and Christianity and the Bible, you know, on that particular show that we had on the UFO files being released and so on. And I know that there are people who essentially claim to be Christians, but their lives don't reflect the claims that they make of being followers of Jesus, because let's be honest, okay, that's not how a Christian behaves. And here we are again, circling back to Lauren Boebert. Now, I think now there are two things happening on the inside of me, okay, right now. One is, on one side, I could believe it because of Lauren Boebert's past public situations. On the other side, I think she's an easy mark for two reasons. One, Lauren Boebert recently stepped up to endorse Thomas Massie. Okay, so she's essentially siding with people that are opposed to President Trump. Laura Loomer is a Trump ally. Okay, I like Trump's policies, but I would not lie for Trump. Okay, I would not do a hit piece in order to further the Trump administration. I'm covering this because it is a story. So Now that they've mentioned Lauren Boebert, I'm being very conflicted. The last time that we played her video, and she essentially brought up the fact that she was running for school board, in the same video where she's exposing Thomas Massie, I felt like there's something very off about doing that. Now here we are, they are essentially talking about Thomas Massie, and then they're roping in someone who also endorsed him recently. I don't know. It's muddying the waters, in my opinion. Okay, guys, just let me know what you think. But it's like I said, two things are happening on the inside of me. And if you're a thinking, breathing human being, this happens to you occasionally where you're conflicted. Okay, and you can hold that. I mean, you're capable of holding two conflicting thoughts in your mind or in your heart at the same time. It is possible. So I don't know about this, but let's keep listening.
A sexual relationship with Congresswoman Boebert.
Jeez.
Honestly, he was proud of it. Like, you know, everyone, he's like, oh, it's the hottest woman in Congress. And I don't know.
How does something like that come up? I mean, did you ask him about his previous sexual partners, or was he bragging about it? Like, how did he end up telling you that he had sexual relations with Lauren Boebert?
Honestly, it was kind of braggy, but hey, see, Thomas is just, it's hard to explain. Like I mean, I think we'll get into it more when we start talking about some of the things that made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I feel like, you know, there's almost a tact that you would have when you're in a relationship with the person that you're with that was just kind of lacking there. So there was many situations where I felt uncomfortable, and it gets into way.
Do you know when he had a sexual relationship with Congresswoman Boebert? Was this while he was married, or was this after his wife passed away?
It was after his wife passed away.
Do you know how long? Because I mean, you said that there were at least two women before you.
Yeah.
And you started talking to him in the third week of August, and then on August 30th, Labor Day weekend, is when you guys met and I guess started dating, you said. So
yeah.
So, do you know how long after his wife died he engaged in sexual relations? Was he dating Lauren Boebert?
I don't know. You would have to go and look, because I know she left abruptly to go to her son's court hearing. And so I'm sure somebody could do some digging and try and calculate, but it's not something that I've really ever cared too much to look into.
But he told you about it.
Yeah.
But it was more of like a fling. It wasn't so much a relationship.
No.
All right, so it's just more of this. And do you know what? One side of me doesn't buy it. Like 70%, the 70% side of me doesn't buy it. Okay. Where I would disagree with Thomas Massie is not voting for sensible policies with the GOP and with Trump. Okay. That's where I would essentially call him out. This story, I think they're desperately trying to make this a thing. Could it be that this happened? It might. Politicians have very surly sexual tendencies, so like this is just like what happened with Trump during the 2024 elections, where they were bringing up his past sexual escapades, and President Trump was quite active. Some of the things that he was accused of doing were true. Some of the things that he was accusing of doing were not so true. They were false accusations and so on. The E. Jean Carroll situation, that doesn't pass the smell test, but that's the one that they shoveled through and tried to force him to pay millions of dollars to her. Okay, now that has been blocked. So I feel like this sits in that same category. Like, it's just convenient that there's an election, and then they're like, okay, let's trot out this person that openly says that they were in a relationship and that he was sexually deviant. and that is meant to discredit him with the Epstein files and so on. I'm just trying to be fair. Like, I could be a raging, pro-Trump guy that I would jump on this train and say, okay, let's ride this train over the cliff. I don't think it would be proper to just swallow this hook, line, and sinker. There is an ulterior motive at play here. I don't think that I can trust her 100%, because she has her own agenda and she's riding on the Thomas Massie hate that is essentially trending right now. So, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section or in the live chat. I'll read it out and then we'll talk about it. But that's just my thought. I would like to be fair. Look, if someone came after Trump like they did during the 2024 election, those of us that saw through it saw that this was basically a hit piece. Now, is it possible that people on the right now are carrying out hit pieces on people who don't support Trump? Okay. Now, it may not be Trump endorsed. It could just be them trying to show their loyalty to Trump. I feel like that shouldn't be happening. It is not on brand for the conservatives or for the right. It is not on brand. Okay, so I'm feeling very uncomfortable about this right now. And that's just the way I feel. Okay. I would like us to be fair. It's just like the coverage I gave to the mass shooting earlier. Yes, we looked at both sides. Okay. Are there things that show that the mosque was connected to extremists? Yes. But does it mean that every random American can strap a firearm and go into these places and shoot them up simply because they are connected to extremists? No. That's why you have the courts. That's why you have the legal system. That's why you have the DOJ. Look, we can't begin to look like the side that we've been talking about for the last 15 years. We can't begin to pick up the tools that we've been talking about and saying that this is wrong. We can't begin to do those things. The one thing that I would say we could consider borrowing, which is tricky, is protests. But even protests right now doesn't make any sense. You could be going to your job and making money. Just go ahead and make money, pay your bills. But what you ought to do, if you really want to protest, show up for elections. Use your votes, show up. That's the way you do it. So even though I kind of feel like, okay, hey, more conservatives should actually engage in protests. It's good for the optics, but it's a waste of time. You could be paying your bills. And look, there's no organization that is out there paying conservative protesters. Okay, so most of these guys are paid. So should we as conservatives begin to use paid protesters? Should we begin to lie that these people actually care about the thing that they are simply paid to show up to do? No. So I don't buy this interview. I don't know. Just let me know your thoughts in the chat. We're going to scoot on over to another report. So Minnesota is in the news again, and we have this this report coming from Fox News.
Alert also Minnesota, the convicted ringleader of one of the state's biggest fraud schemes, is speaking to Fox News from behind bars. Now, she believes that the scam was no surprise to local Democratic leaders, and she's naming names. She spoke to Alexis McAdams. Hi, Alexis.
Hey, Dana. Yeah, so everywhere you look in the state of Minnesota, right, there seems to be another fraud scam. So this one involves Amy Bach. She's a Minnesota woman convicted of fraud for taking taxpayer money that was meant to feed hungry kids. But listen to this. Bach tells me the real issue here is the state of Minnesota, which she says kept giving scammers your taxpayer money even after they were flagged as fraudsters.
I have to believe that the governor's office and Keith Ellison's office were aware of this. They've said they were involved in helping the FBI. They've said they were made aware. But apparently I'm scary, so they couldn't do anything.
So Bach ran this nonprofit called Feeding Our Future. You might have heard of it. It was one of dozens convicted in this $250 million scam. You can see her mugshot there. Prosecutors say this group set up sham restaurants. They pretended they were making these meals. They got paid by the state for those meals, but they just pocketed the cash. Bach, who's looking at 30 years behind bars, tells me the state signed off on those businesses, not her.
It all went through a process. They were all approved. They were all paid by the state, yet all the fingers are being pointed at me.
Did she testify in court? Did she say these things while her prosecution was ongoing? Now that's important because now that she's been convicted, if the situation is that she's only speaking out now because she's in jail and she wasn't able to get off the charges that were brought against her and she's trying to bring other people down, okay, fine. But the interesting thing is that she's implicating again Ilhan Omar, who we've been talking about for months now, about the fraud in Minnesota. And then you have Tim Walz, who essentially claimed that Nick Shirley's looking into the fraud in Minnesota was white supremacy. So there's no surprise there. We also knew about the whistleblowers who said that they were actively threatened for bringing up the fraud. So she's not telling us anything we don't already know.
And it's not just Bach. Whistleblowers told a congressional committee Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison there ignored warnings for years as millions of dollars and millions were stolen on their watch. Congress is investigating a long list of massive fraud schemes in the state. It's hard to keep up. Prosecutors say it's led to at least $9 billion in fraud, Dana, and counting. Congress also asking why the Attorney General there would meet with a group of Somali fraudsters, which were under FBI investigation in 2021. The group can be heard in an audio clip given to us by Bach's lawyer offering to donate to his campaign if he can help them get their funding flowing again. Ellison denies any wrongdoing here. He slammed Bach in a statement to Fox, calling her a liar and manipulator, adding now she's on a media tour to deflect her guilt onto others instead of finally taking responsibility for this fraud scheme that she ran. So we reached out to Governor Walz too, Dana. He didn't get back to us. House Republicans say it's just getting started. They want to subpoena Walz and Ellison because they say they're responsible for ripping off American taxpayers.
All right, so that's a crazy report. Okay, so let me know your thoughts in the chat. I think the fact that there was corruption happening with Minnesota and Tim Walz being involved, that's old news. We've all been saying it. And if she's only confirming what we already know, I don't think that is much of a surprise. Now, I'm going to be sharing this story here. Ayanna Pressley. Ayanna Pressley is one of those people who essentially claims that they're Christian when they are not, in order to for political reasons. Okay, so. But here she is doing what Democrats do best, okay? Race baiting. So, it's election season when Democrats say Republicans are trying to bring back literal chattel slavery. And Presley is speaking about that right now. So let's just have a listen. All right, so she claims that this administration is trying to take black people all the way back to pre-Reconstruction, back to the pre-Reconstruction era. So I did something like I always do. I did a fact check. And I simply asked the question. So I opened up the post and I asked the question, are the statements made in this video factually true? And the answer came back as, surprise, surprise, no. Well, I'm going to share the link to this fact check so you can play around with it for yourself. It's going to be in the chat in a few minutes. By the end of this live stream, I'm going to hit send, and it's going to hit the live chat, and you can copy it and use it for your own purposes. Because look, what I want to try to do is to help
also
you.
Also in Minnesota, the convicted
Sorry
ringleader
about that.
of one of the state's biggest fraud schemes.
I'm trying to help you learn how to do these fact checks for yourself. Now, while all of that was happening with Ayanna Pressley, okay, we have Ted Cruz clapping back on Democrats claiming that these rulings are essentially a Jim Crow effort from the Republican side. Let's have a listen.
That the Americans do not support voter ID. Mr. President, our Democrat colleagues are fond of bellowing into the TV cameras that photo ID to vote is Jim Crow. They tell us with mock earnestness. Now, I will admit, our Democrat colleagues should be experts in Jim Crow because it was Democrat politicians who passed the Jim Crow laws. It was Democrat politicians who founded the Ku Klux Klan. It was Democrat politicians for decade after decade who enforced discrimination, separate but equal, poll taxes, and a host of other laws designed to prevent African Americans from voting. But do you know who has rejected their disingenuous claim that photo ID to vote is Jim Crow? The Supreme Court of the United States. Supreme Court of the United States, the state of Indiana, passed photo ID law requiring that you show a photo ID to vote. And a group of left-wing plaintiffs filed litigation challenging that.
All right, so I love the fact that he brought that up, and I wish that more Republicans would give this history lesson every single time the Democrats get up and start squealing about Jim Crow and racism, because they are the party of racism. They are the party that can't let go of racism. Every single thing is all about skin color. It's all about minorities versus majorities. It's all about class warfare with them. They need you to be angry about somebody's class, somebody's immutable qualities like skin color, but they never talk about policies that make sense. That's why they always have to go after those kinds of conversations. If you don't have anything you're upset about, like race or skin color or classism, and you take a second look at their policies, you would never vote for them. Now, I saw this video, and I'm going to just play it. I don't know how much of this I can play, but it's titled "The Real Party of Racism." Okay, that it was and still is the Democrats. So let's have a listen. I'll play as much as I can, and then we'll skip over to the next story.
Republicans are racist, right? Well, that's what everyone says.
Racist.
Racist. Racist. Racist. But which party is the real party of racists? Hey guys, my name's Emma Katz, and I'm about to tell you something you've never learned before because your history teacher didn't want you to know about it. You probably learned that the Democrats have always played a major role in achieving racial equality and justice. I bet you learned about the civil rights movement in the 1960s. But do you know about the civil rights movement in the 1860s?
The civil rights revolution of the 1960s did nothing more than secure guarantees for equal rights and voting rights that had already been put into the Constitution 100 years previously by the Republican Party. More Republicans than Democrats voted for the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
The 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, passed with 100% Republican support. 77% of Democrats voted against it. The 14th Amendment, which gave black citizenship and equal rights, passed with 94% of Republican support. 100% of Democrats voted against it. The 15th Amendment, which gave slaves the right to vote, passed with 100% of Republican support. 100% of Democrats voted against it. The Ku Klux Klan was a group of crazy racist Republicans, right? Wrong.
The Ku Klux Klan was founded by Nathan Bedford Forrest.
White man's country! Let a white man rule!
He was the first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan and the pledged delegate to the Democratic Convention.
The KKK targeted over 3,000 black and 1,000 white Republicans. The 1924 Democratic National Convention is even called the Klan Bake because the Democrats refused to condemn the KKK. You know about Rosa Parks, right? But have you heard about Ida B. Wells?
Long before Rosa Parks refused to sit in the back of the bus,
What you yelling?
Ida B. Wells refused to give up her first-class train seat to a white man. The reason we don't hear more about this,
See what the law has to say about that.
is because Ida B. Wells was a Republican.
Interesting. The Democrats have been playing the media for decades.
What about the big party switch? You know, the theory that everyone in the Republican Party suddenly became racist and everyone in the Democratic Party stopped being racist?
Let's make a list and we'll see who switched. Ready for the big switch? We'll go from Democratic blue to Republican red. So here it is. Yes, that's it. Less than 1%.
That's
the big
crazy.
switch is a big lie.
Blacks became Democrats in the 1930s because of the New Deal. Southern whites became Republicans from the 1970s through the 90s as the South was becoming more prosperous. They didn't switch because of racial issues. They switched because of economic reasons. So why did Democrats always blame slavery on Republicans and lie about the big party switch? The same reason why one of the most racist presidents, Democrat Lyndon Johnson, finally signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They want the black vote.
Are you saying that today's Democratic Party continues to use blacks for their political advantage?
Absolutely, that's exactly what I'm saying.
And it's up to you and me to educate ourselves and anyone else we can before the next election so that we can stop the real racists from being elected. I got all the clips and basically all the information in this video from Dinesh D'Souza's movie, Hillary's America, and I highly suggest it if you want to learn more about the true history of the Democratic Party. Bye.
That movie was made or released in 2016, and I never heard of it until I saw this video. So I just thought I would share it with you. If you've seen that movie, let me know in the chat or in the comment section. I'm gonna find that movie. I'm supposed to get it on Amazon and then watch it. So I'm gonna just do that because it's like we've been doing fact checks, we've been using AI to do deep research about these things and essentially fact check the Democrats while they're telling these lies on camera. And it's satisfying to know that there's a movie out there that essentially details all of this elegantly. So I'm going to be watching that very soon. Who knows, maybe we'll do a watch party and then do that together. All right, so let's listen to this next video because again, more and more people are calling out the Democrats for who they really are.
I'm beginning the entire Democratic Party is a whole scam. What is it really about? Stealing money, flooding the country with illegals, and calling us racists. That's it. Every time you look under the hood, all you find are scams. COVID. Wait a second. Fauci funded the lab where the virus came from? Whoa! Somali daycare, $19 billion. Wait a second, there's no children in the daycare center. What happened to USAID? None of the money left D.C. It all went to Democrats there.
And when you call it out, they call you a bigot, they call you a racist, but they never answer the question.
Everything, Russia, Hunter, whatever happened to the Green New Deal? It was about $1 trillion, right? Where are the windmills?
The green.
Where are the solar panels? Where'd they go? I haven't seen anything. They haven't even built the little charging stations for the EVs. Where did it go? How about Omar? Omar, the other day, was worth $100,000. Next month, she was worth $30 million. Then she went back down to $100,000. How does that happen? They put Donald Trump on trial because of a bookkeeping thing. And she just gets away with inflating and deflating her net worth. Maybe she's hiding the money. Maybe there was never any money.
Talking about the trial of Donald Trump over his Stormy Daniels situation. I have something. Okay, so I saw a post a couple of days back that essentially put it side by side and said Hillary Clinton spent millions on the dossier, the Russia hoax, the Steele dossier, and that was the same kind of offense that they claim that Trump committed. What happened to Hillary Clinton? She got a fine. What happened to Donald Trump? They dragged him through the courts, and then they essentially prosecuted him and then they're calling him a felon. It's crazy that, we we saw all this happen. Look, it's insane that Democrats are still getting votes. And you know what? People are still going to vote for the Democrats because there are people who are just that way. Okay, there are people who are just that way, but there are others who just don't have the information, and that's why we do these shows. That's why we find these stories and we just put it out there and say, hey, in case you didn't know, okay, here's what's going on. So we're at the end of the show. We've covered a few things. We covered the shooting, very sad situation. We looked at a couple of sides of this story, but yet we know that going forward, we're going to find out more about the two men who carried out the shooting, the 17 and 18-year-old. We're going to learn more about why they were there, and a few other things are going to surface. But like I said, this is not the way to solve problems. You let law enforcement do its job, but the law enforcement has to do its job because California has been notorious for being soft on crime. I think that has to change, seriously has to change. We also looked at a few other stories with the Thomas Massie situation, his ongoing feud with the Trump administration, and then the thing that's beginning to look like a hit piece coming through Laura Loomer. She's a respected journalist, but I don't like the feeling like that it's looking more like a hit piece every time I take a look at that story. But let's see where it goes. And then we looked at all the other things that we covered just before this point with the statements of Ayanna Pressley and the race grift that the Democrats are still carrying out. And just let me know what you think in the comment section, because this is the only thing the Democrats have, and they're only going to push race, and that's all they have. And if you're out there and you're still voting Democrats, I would ask you to just reconsider and do your own research. All right, guys, we're at the end of the show. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. We'll be back same time tomorrow. All right, bye-bye, and God bless you.